The Galactic Council had designated planet Kepler 442F as a Class XI Deathworld, the highest possible threat rating. When the distress beacon from the crashed freighter's stellar meridian began transmitting from its surface, the Council's response was unanimous. Write off the crew as lost. But they hadn't counted on humans. Alana Chun adjusted her makeshift shelter's support beam, fashioned from what the ship's xenobiologist had called Megadeath Vine, a carnivorous plant that dissolved most carbon-based life forms on contact. She'd boiled it, scraped off the acid glands, and now used it as surprisingly sturdy construction material. "Abraham," she called out, watching her companion emerge from the crimson jungle carrying something that writhed. "Please tell me that's not another one of those screamer worms." Abraham Okonkwo grinned, his dark skin glistening with a mixture of sweat and the bioluminescent sap he'd learned to use as insect repellent. "Better. It's a razorback salamander. I've been watching them for 3 days. Turns out if you grab them right behind the gill spikes, they can't whip their tails around. The same salamander that killed Ensign Vrax in under 30 seconds. The very same," Abraham said cheerfully, depositing the thrashing creature into a pit they'd lined with heat-resistant stone. "But Vrax tried to shoot it." Predators here respond to aggression with extreme prejudice. Show confidence, but not hostility, and they calculate you're not worth the energy expenditure. Alana shook her head, though she was smiling. 3 months stranded on Kepler, 442F, and somehow she and Abraham had not only survived but thrived. The other crew members, 2 Zephyrians, a Qualix, and a Metherian, had lasted less than a week. Each death had been cataloged by the ship's AI as statistically inevitable. "How's the rescue situation?" Abraham asked, poking at their fire. The wood came from a species of tree that naturally combusted in oxygen-rich atmospheres. They'd learned to harvest it during its brief, non-flammable juvenile stage. The Council sent another message. Alana replied, pulling up the holographic display from their salvage communicator. "They're still debating whether a rescue attempt would constitute unnecessary loss of life. Apparently, we're the first people to survive here longer than 6 days. Their loss. This place has excellent real estate potential." Alana laughed. That was so very Abraham, finding humor in the absurd. When they'd first crashed, she'd been the ship's astrophysicist, and he'd been a cultural anthropologist hitching a ride to the Andromeda research station. Neither had survival training. But Abraham had pointed out that humans had colonized every environment on Earth, from deserts to tundra, and that this was simply another challenge. "Speaking of which," Alana said, "I finished mapping the Eastern Territory. Want to hear what I found?" "Always." 16 new species of lethally poisonous plants, 3 apex predators that hunt in coordinated packs, a river that's actually a colony organism that digests anything that touches it, and, she paused for effect, a fruit that tastes like mango and provides complete nutrition. Abraham's eyes lit up. Spicy, extra spicy, or dinner? It had become their classification system, much to the horror of the Galactic Council observers who occasionally checked their status. Spicy meant dangerous, but manageable. Extra spicy meant potentially lethal. Dinner meant edible, useful, or both. "Definitely dinner," Alana confirmed. "The trees are guarded by those armored hornets, but I've figured out their patrol patterns. We can harvest during the 20-minute gap in their cycle. You're beautiful when you're out thinking an alien ecosystem." Alana felt warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the fire. Somewhere between the second week's near-death experience with acid-spitting slugs and the crystalline spider colony that had tried to convert them into egg incubators, she and Abraham had become more than survival partners. "Smooth talker," she said, but moved closer to him. "Think they'll ever actually send a rescue ship? Does it matter?" She considered this. Back in civilized space, she'd been a mid-level researcher, perpetually exhausted and unfulfilled. Abraham had been between assignments, questioning his career choice. Here, every day was a puzzle to solve, a challenge to overcome. They'd created something remarkable, not just survival, but a life. "The salamander's ready," Abraham announced, using their homemade tongs to extract the cooked meat. The creature that had terrorized the crew was now dinner, seasoned with herbs they'd cultivated from widow's breath flowers, lethal if inhaled, delicious if dried and crushed as they ate. Alana pulled up her digital journal. Over the months, she'd cataloged everything. The 200 distinct threats the Council's database listed, plus another 147 they discovered. But more importantly, she documented their solutions. How to neutralize the neural shock moss. Which direction thunder lizards always charged. The musical frequency that calmed rage bears. What are you thinking? Abraham asked, noticing her expression. I'm thinking, Alana said slowly, that we should write a guidebook. Human's Guide to Kepler 442f, from Deathworld to Paradise in 90 days. Abraham laughed, then stopped. You're serious. Why not? The Council thinks this place is uninhabitable. But that's because they approach it with fear. We approached it with curiosity and respect. There's a difference between a death world and a world that demands you learn its rules. 3 days later, when the Council finally authorized a rescue mission, largely because human diplomats had made their continued refusal a political nightmare, the rescue team found Alana and Abraham's camp with something approaching disbelief. The two humans had cultivated gardens, built a water purification system from crystallized monster bile, domesticated 3 species previously thought untamable. They'd even brewed alcohol from fermented glowfruit. This is impossible, the Qualix captain whispered. The survival probability calculations were made by people who'd never tried, Alana interrupted. She exchanged a glance with Abraham. Captain, before we discuss evacuation, we'd like to propose something. We're requesting colonization rights to Kepler 442f. The captain's mandibles clicked in confusion. You want to stay? Abraham grinned, that same wild joy in his eyes that Alana had come to love. Captain, you call this a death world. We call it home. And somewhere in the jungle, a razorback salamander screamed its territorial challenge. Alana smiled, definitely dinner. The Yendi.